Let's talk about the Washington Commanders because this is no longer the same old Washington organization with a new ownership group led by Josh Harris, a new coaching staff led by head coach Dan Quinn, a remade front office led by new general manager Adam Peters. This organization is working on building a sustained, successful franchise. And really, this Commanders situation is very reminiscent to the 49ers in 2017 when John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were hired. And in that front office, they also hired Adam Peters. And really look at both situations. The 49ers back then, the roster was a mess. They had the number 2 overall pick. They had the most cap space in the NFL. This Washington situation is the same exact thing. The roster was a mess, number 2 overall pick, most cap space in the NFL. And really, you look at what Adam Peters did as he went to work to rebuild this roster. He went out in free agency and they did not really pour an insane amount of money on 1 or 2 specific players, but instead they just wanted to supplement the roster with good players who can make an impact and really just jumpstart this new era in Washington. And look at all the players they added. You could see here on the screen, Bobby Wagner, Austin Eckler, Tyler Biadasz, the center, Frankie Luva, a really underrated linebacker, Dorrance Armstrong, Jeremy Chin, Nick Allegretti, a guard, Dante Fowler Jr., Zach Ertz, Marcus Mariota is going to be a good backup quarterback for them who could mentor the rookie and Jaden Daniels. And you add all those players to a roster who has a few foundational players like Terry McLaurin and Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. Those are 3 really good players that they already had on the roster. And now you have something to work with in year 1, and then you go to the draft, and that is really where this new front office expects to build the roster moving forward. And Jaden Daniels, the number 2 overall pick, the Heisman Trophy winner, their new offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury was a very big fan of his from day 1 when he was hired. That was one of the quarterbacks he was eyeing off the bat. They get him in number 2. He's the franchise quarterback that they are banking on. And you look down the list at 3 second-round picks. Johnny Newton was a first-round talent on most boards, but he was coming off foot surgery. He actually just underwent another foot surgery recently, so there is some concern over there. But if he is healthy, that is a really good player. And the one thing about their new GM and Adam Peters is coming from San Francisco, he was the guy who led the draft room for them. And you look at the history of the 49ers, they had a really good history of drafting players in the middle to late round picks. Look at George Kittle. Of course, Brock Purdy is the one player everyone will mention, Dre Greenlaw, and the list really goes on and on. He was one of the main people responsible for that, and you look at the Commanders draft, it would not surprise me if a player like a Luke McCaffrey, the brother of Christian, or Jordan McGee, or Dominic Hampton, those guys who were picked in the mid to late round picks, if they eventually become key contributors for this team. So this Washington franchise is really embarking on a new era, and I don't think anyone really expects them to have a big year in 2024. Year 1 is more of setting the culture. Let's see what we got over here. And then year 2 is where we could see them finally becoming a little bit more aggressive as they start to build out this roster to have success in the future. And the ultimate goal of year for them is to be like the 49ers. We have to be in it every single year. It starts with this year, with what they did in the offseason, and we'll see how they do. But when we look back at the Commanders in 2-3 years from now, we're going to look back at this offseason as a big reason as why they're having success in the future.